All right, welcome to another episode of Investing with Quito. I've got my co-host here, Jeremy, and we do have a special guest. I'm excited to have Jeremy introduced to us. So, Jeremy, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm well. I'm excited to have Laurie here. Laurie, I know you've been in real estate for a long time, and this whole show is about investing in multiple things in businesses, in real estate, and things that leverage money, right? And I know that's what you're all about in your life. And you've been in real estate for 22 years, and I didn't know that you actually are a broker in Montana and in Ohio. And I thought that was really, really cool. So I'd just love to hear your background really quick, and then love to hear how. What I'm really excited about in this episode is how investors like ourselves can work with agents in a market like this because it's still really hot, a really hot market. Like house prices are still really high, even with interest rates really high. But things still aren't moving, is what I see. And a lot of agents are nervous, and a lot of investors like it'd be helpful because I think everywhere, at least for me at least, Quito finds all his deals off market from everyone, apparently. But people like me, like I still want to work with agents and get in the market like that. So I'd love to hear your story, your background, and I'd love to hear more about that. So
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on here. I'm excited to be here too. I did get started in real estate 22 years ago. I actually was in Ohio first. I was a single mom doing real estate. So, doing the grind 70, 80 hours a week. I can tell you, and I hope all real estate agents that watch this are listening, you don't learn how or what investing is as a real estate agent with your license. And that's a big mistake because what happens is you're chasing commissions and you're literally only as good as your last deal and you're fired as soon as you get a closing. So with that being said, you're not creating cash flow. Cash flow is where you are actually creating that leverage and that
mhm.
lifestyle for your family. When people get into real estate, they always say that they want time, freedom, and money. There is no time and freedom in real estate as a real estate agent. So I want you to be a real estate agent, be successful, and love your business, but take a look at real estate investing too, because that is going to give you the ability to really create that leverage in that life, that money that you want to have for your family, creating wealth for your family, generational wealth for your family. So I want to make sure that's pointed out first and foremost. Is had somebody told me 22 years ago to do both, it would be completely different for my family and I now, because that grind is real. That roller coaster ride is real in real estate. So I'm really excited to talk to everybody here about, if you're a real estate agent, opening your mind to one, working with real estate investors, and two, learning what they're doing because these guys are smart, and guys and gals, I should say, in general. But, they are very, very smart. They're doing this in a way that's helping homeowners, it's helping business owners. People get into businesses sometimes and they regret it or they don't know how to manage it. They don't know how to do anything really to grow it and to expand. So when they get with a real estate investor who has a big vision and they're able to say, look, I can offer you this, I can help you with an exit plan, and then that business is going to flourish. It's not going to shut down, or the home is going to be able to not be foreclosed on. So one thing about real estate agents is because you don't know and you don't understand and you think it's scary and you think it's a scam, you think you're protecting your homeowner, but you're not. So when an investor calls you up and says, hey, tell me about this property, you should be open to it. And you should always tell your seller about these phone calls. Make these connections. You're not doing your homeowner any favor by not telling them that these conversations are happening. So please reach out to me, reach out to Quito, reach out to Jeremy. Talk to us about these conversations. We have investor groups that you're going to be able to come to. Come and learn from investors, get into this world because it's going to open up more business for you as a realtor or real estate agent. And it's going to possibly give you the opportunity to learn how to actually do these investments as well. So I'm excited to talk about this more. And I'm brutally honest when it comes to the market because I don't think we need to sugarcoat things. I think people know that we're in a very hyper inflated market. They also know that there's people that are going to be upside down on what they currently have because the prices are just going up, up, and up. Income is not being created as fast as what the expenses are. right?
Mhm.
So I want to have these conversations. I want to be open about it. And so what questions do you guys have that I can elaborate on? And of course, I have a lot of questions for you too.
Yeah,
Oh, great.
Laura, it's like the fact that, being that you've been in real estate for 22 years, I mean, you've seen the cycle, you've seen the ups and, the ups and downs and, because as you know, I've been an agent myself, right? And nobody, told me that, hey, that we have market cycles. I didn't know. And also too, like working with investors, because like you said, most agents just want to just chase that commission, right? Hey, look, you're and it kind of highlights like, hey, as soon as you make that sale and closes, you're fired, right? You have to go and find the next deal and find the next deal. And you mentioned about when you're working with agents, like investors, like learn from them, learn what they're doing, and then see how you could apply that in your business, right? And it says, because sometimes it like just boggles my mind. It's like agents see deals all the time. Like, how come they're not seeing what they can do to take advantage of it, right? Because I understand that agent does have a fiduciary responsibility for, for their clients, but at the same time, if they can come up with a creative solution, they're actually helping their clients and not, harming them. So I really like the fact that you point that out.
Well, you know why agents don't tend to look for other ways is because they're looking at, I'm not going to get paid if I send this to an investor. So that's wrong. First and foremost, agents, you need to understand that investors do know that you need to get paid. If you're bringing them a deal or you're going to help out your client or you have a listing, you can get a finder's fee for connecting these people. Is it going to be as much commission as if it was traditional? Probably not, but you have to look at it as you're helping somebody that needs help. And if you go at it as, I look at it as like a servant attitude to where you're looking at it as I need to help as many people as I can. That's why I have my license, is because I wanted to help people. I didn't get in it to be just greedy and about the commissions like people think. And I really don't believe that most real estate agents are in that mindset. I really do think they want to help people. But at the same time, they're worried about feeding their families, especially with the way that prices are right now. So, with that being said, agents, talk to the investor. What is in it for you? What are they offering to pay you? Sometimes they can't answer that directly until they start to put numbers together, but they do want to make sure that you're paid as well for that connection. So those are things that, let's say that that seller, because you have to price it too high in order for them to be able to move on, maybe you're not going to sell it anyway. But if you have this investor come into it, now you can help them to be able to move on. Plus, you're still going to make some money. So it does help and solve a lot of problems. So I just want people to be open to that conversation and realize there is something in it for you. One, you're helping somebody else, which leads to more referrals. You're getting into a community of people that will, reach out to you and say, hey, have you found another deal for me? So you're opening up your network, which is what you should be doing.
Right. And absolutely, like, especially if you're working with one investor, because an investor could buy 2, 3 homes a year, right? Versus just a traditional buyer who may buy one home every 7 or 10 years, right? With
Right.
investors, I know like myself, I'll buy as many as I can as long as the numbers make sense, right?
Correct. That's
So,
right.
so like you said, just creating, one, you're able to help the seller, and as also to be able to create that referral base, right? I mean, imagine working with 5 investors, each of them buy 4 properties a year, right there. I mean, that's a lot of transactions for one agent, right? And they could make a pretty, decent living off of just having five investors versus working with 20 20 different buyers, right?
Yes. Well, and let's talk about buyers here for a minute, because the way that with the National Association of Realtors lawsuit, which you guys are probably fully aware of, in July coming up, it's going to change the way that representation is happening when it comes to agents with their buyers. So basically, eXp Realties, who I work with, and we've been very proactive. We've started right now, actually, we started this in April. to be completely ready with all of our disclosures and forms to make sure that we have these communication conversations with the buyers. So with any more than, I would say the fear is there right now for agents, because buyers were for a lot of them, their bread and butter. They would work with, let's say through the summer in Montana, 10, 15 buyers or so. That was their bread and butter. You look forward to the hot season, when everybody's coming in as tourists. The problem is now is that as of July, because of the fact that NAR says, okay, you can no longer expect the seller to pay for the buyer's agents. Now the buyer's agents have to have a conversation with the buyer. How much can you afford to pay me? Because more than likely it's going to come down to where, one, it's not disclosed in July anymore how much a seller would be paying a buyer's agent. But now you have to have that conversation with a buyer, which is very uncomfortable for agents that are used to the seller paying for them through the seller commissions that are collected from the listing broker. Now they're like, I don't know if I'm going to get paid. Now I have these buyers coming in that I want to work with. I don't know if they can pay me. So those are going to be very difficult conversations to have. But as agents, you want to make sure that you look at other ways of making income and money. So look at it as, okay, this can get exciting. I can start to look for other properties and deals for investors. I can find things going on for them that will help you compensate for that fear if you think you're not going to close as many buyers as you usually do. So we're telling our agents, it's always been that you want to go and get as many listings as you can, because listings is where you can scale. You can scale your business up. You can get more listings, which equal this many buyers. But if you're just a buyer's agent, it can be scary right now because you don't know if you're going to get paid. You don't know how those conversations are going to go. And you're hoping that you can get it through seller concessions too. So it's just a different world we're going into. But I think this opportunity, if you look at it, can open up doors for you to dive into another side of real estate, which is really working with these investors. So I'm excited about it because the agents that I work with, I'm teaching them to go into a listing presentation and talk to their seller about creative financing. Talk to them about the fact that this, yes, traditionally we could have a buyer come in and pay you, but, based on your scenario and what you want to do and what you're able to do, would you be open to talking to some of the investors that we work with and see if that would work out for you? So I think that is an exciting thing because I think the agents that are going to be serious about listings are going to thrive. They're going to look for more people that could possibly be an investor relationship, and help with creative financing. So for you guys, I would like just to explain to agents a little bit further, when they hear creative financing, again, they get worried. Are they going to get paid? Is this the best thing for my seller? So what are some of the things that I know you're calling agents, and especially Jeremy, you're talking to people on market. What are the rejections that you're getting from agents that we can talk about to try to help them to understand your intention and what you can do?
Yeah, it's a good question. When I've called on things that are really on market for a long time, like over 100 days, or over 200 days, right? Usually it's like, hey, what's the seller need? What do they want? And usually it's they're like, oh, they just want to get this price or they just want this. And it's hard to get to the real motivation of it. Like if something's been on the market for over 250 days and then it's relisted again and it's on the market for 40 more days, not having that talk with the sellers, like, what do you actually really need? Do you really need just to sell this so you can buy another home? Do you need just to get rid of it so you can move? So trying to get to the heart of what the seller needs is one thing that's a hard thing when I talk to agents. And another one is just the creative blockage. If I bring up anything like, hey, they're willing to I can take over their payments. Hey, they're willing to do a seller finance deal. There's like 10 ways to structure a deal like this, but they just think very narrowly of contract for deed, and therefore it's off the table if that's not an option. But there's 10 other ways that you can structure the deal creatively that would work. So having those conversations or getting to the door that would start those is helpful. Or like even when I talk to buying agents, if I'm say, hey, can you go talk to this agent for me? they don't quite know the verbiage to use. They're not quite as educated, right, how to speak the language or the objections to overcome or things like that.
That is really good insight. And I can tell you, I mentor agents as well and new agents, and I've had them tell me that they've had these conversations with investors. And so my question back to them is, why did you say that? Why did you not have a further conversation? And it is true, instantly they're thinking it's a scam or it can't really help them. This isn't going to work for them. How do you know it's not going to work for them until you give your seller the opportunity to think about it and to be educated on it? So I think education is a big thing, helping agents to get educated on what the creative financing terms are. What does that mean? Like you said, there's 10 different ways. I believe Pace Morby, he's one of the people that we actually work with as investors. He talks about there's like 28 different ways that he uses in determining how a property is going to be possibly, a deal to help people out. So there's so many different ways. There's hybrid ways. There's ways that you can wrap one, into another. You can have a second note on it. There's so many different things that you can do to help people. And what I love about you guys and also the community is the fact that you are building a strong community and you're part of a national community when it comes to investors. So what kind of ability does that give you to help people when it's not just you, like I'm the investor, but what is it like to be able to have that private money network, you can say, that you can reach out to within a community?
I think, like you said, having the communities is great because you get to leverage off of other people's expertise, right? And it also builds your credibility, especially if you're a newer investor and you need, someone to leverage. So that definitely helps. But your point in terms of when agents, when they hear something that they're not used to, is really getting them to open up and be more curious versus just saying, I don't think that's good for the seller. It's like, how do you know? Did you ask the seller? So, I'm glad that you're mentoring, agents and encourage them to be curious, to be open, right? Because I bought there's a couple of years ago, there was a house that was on the market, and I called up the agent and I asked them about creative financing, and they was like, oh no, he didn't want it. So long story short, when that listing had expired, right, I called up the owner, right, because it was no longer because it's no longer under contract with the agents. I called directly the owner, uh, and he was totally open to it. And we closed on a deal. Had that agent would have been open to having more of conversation with the seller, that agent would have gotten a commission as well. Because I understand, as as an investor, we understand that agents do need to get paid for their service. There's no doubt about that. And so, just being able to having the agent understand that, hey, either way, they're going to get paid, right? Some way, it's like, and they'll be able to get their commission, and they be able to help the seller as well. And so yeah, to your point, just getting the agent to be more open and more curious about, okay, well, how does this work? How can it work? And then exploring it from there.
Perfect. Well, I was talking to a real estate agent that's not a part of my team or company, and the type of listings that he's getting, and he's working with another agent that's moved out of the state that's referring him business. The comments that he's given back to me and the feedback was, this person needs to sell. So we're hearing that more often. They need to sell, which I think that being that I'm from Ohio, I heard that all the time because I was in a primary market where, people did have to move out of the area. They had to move because of relocation. It was a primary market. I think sometimes because in Montana we have such a secondary market and a lot of people buy second and third homes here, and they're holding on to them for, Airbnb, like I said, the vacation home, whatever. People are in the mindset, in our volume of multi-million-dollar homes here, they don't tend to hear that they need to sell. But we're getting to the point where we're seeing more multi-million-dollar properties come on the market where they do need to sell. And part of that is because taxes went up because of the fact that the market went up. Of course, taxes are going to be reassessed, which from what I've heard, some of them have doubled, which then makes somebody go, I really can't afford to keep this property any longer. The other thing that we're seeing too is there's more and more businesses to where they also need to sell. Even homes that have really good Airbnb income, those owners we're hearing are needing to sell. So there's things going on in people's lives beyond what just because it looks like they're making money and it's flourishing or it looks like things are okay, doesn't mean it is. So having those conversations with people, and especially as an agent, because you get to sit down with that person and have that conversation with them, find out what's really going on and say to them, look, it's okay. You can tell me because I can help you. If there's things I need to know, I have connections. I network with these other people. I can come up with a creative way to help you if we need to. If not, traditionally, we can still be on the market. But after testing the price, seeing what people think, seeing if we can, get what you want. But if we can't, there could be alternative ways that I can help you, and that's going to be real conversations I think we're going to continue to have. And we need to be prepared for that because people are worried about stock market. They are worried about, you saw Bitcoins drop down like, and huge amounts down to like 57,000 now. So people are seeing they're losing thousands, of course, with Bitcoin and stocks. You're holding on, right? You should be holding on to those things. But people are worried because they're seeing things decrease rather than grow. And with interest rates, holding steady and they're not going to be decreasing anytime soon, that's causing people to have concern. On top of that, if somebody does want to move right now, yes, they can get more money on the selling side, but what can they buy? What can they replace? How can they replace what they currently have? Because it's going to cost them a lot of money to buy, right? So that's making them hesitate, thinking maybe I shouldn't. So with that being said, again, talking to your homeowners, finding out what their motivation is, talking to business owners, what is their motivation, making sure we're educating people on the fact that there are legal ways to do things that can help them out. Legal, nothing fishy, nothing that, the IRS or the government is going to, think is sneaky or wrong. It's all legal. And making sure you understand what those types of deals are that are out there for you.
Mm-hmm. So Laurie, as we were talking before, you just talked about the markets. Like in Montana, in Kalispell is obviously a different market from Billings, Montana. But in general, like you don't have a crystal ball, but what are you seeing in the market? Like with agents, are homes on the market for a long time? Are they selling really quick? Does it just really depend? What's kind of like the zones or anything like that with?
Yeah, so right now, you're seeing 1,200, 1,300 square foot homes being listed, for 500 to 580,000. That's still feeling too much for most people, right? Because they're looking at, okay, there's no basement, there's really no storage. I'm spending $500,000 on a couple, was it $3,000 or $4,000 a month for a mortgage payment for a 1,200 square foot home. So people are not jumping at these homes. So maybe this summer when we have more of the tourists come in and maybe they're looking for more, more property here and they decide to move, maybe. But the problem with the homes in like that price range is that they're not short-term rental approved. And so what people are looking for specifically from other states is short-term rentals. And what we're seeing is there's a lot of amendments to covenants happening to where in neighborhoods, they used to not have a restriction on short-term rental and all of a sudden they do. So those things are being amended. That takes away a huge amount of buyers that could have been interested in your property because they are coming from another state. They do want to have short-term rental and you've just taken that away from them. the ability to make money. So then they're having to jump up to the next price range. So now they're looking at 800, 900, a million, 1.2 to try to find that short-term rental. But does that make sense on return on investment, to spend that kind of money? So that's what we're seeing is, majority of the buyers, they want to have some type of cash flow. That's why they're purchasing. They need to make their money work for them. People that would buy that $500,000, $600,000 house, I'm seeing more people downsizing to it than I am seeing people that can come up to it, if that makes sense. So like if you have somebody that's trying to sell their home for, 900, a million, 1.2, they paid 400,000 for it, whether it's 5 to 10 years ago, they want to take advantage of the market. They're looking to downsize and they might buy that $500,000, $600,000 house, but we're not really seeing people that like first and second time home buyers that can afford that. They're really needing to still be in that 300, 1,000, 350. And there's really nothing on the market for that that's decent. And I mean, you'll see trailers, but it's a trailer. Whether you have the land or not, it's still a trailer, even if it's on a permanent foundation. So people aren't excited about the market. They're not, they're very hesitant to put their house in the market, and they're super worried about what they could buy if they did sell. So that's an issue. The other issue is when somebody puts their home on the market, they don't want to entertain a sale of home contingency. But if they don't entertain a sale of home contingency and give that other person that here's your buyer, but they have a house to sell, if they're not open to that, that also loses them the possibility to be able to sell their home. So, people are very stuck in their ways. And I think it goes back to agents explaining, look, you can do a sale of home contingency with a bump clause. So if something else comes along that's better and this person can't release that contingency, you can accept this other offer. And then, that offer's dead or that contract's dead. But again, it goes back to the agents really explaining to their clients what their options are and encouraging them rather than discouraging them. I had an agent tell me a couple of weeks ago that her client would not do a sale of home contingency and she doesn't want her to because it's too early on the market. Well, now, and that was 3 or 4 weeks ago, they don't have an offer still. And they could have been under contract with a sale of home contingency, which does motivate the seller on the other side to drop the price of their home and get very serious about selling it. So it's just, it's just what I see is a lot of people that are wanting to take advantage of the money they could get right now, which is more than ever. And then a lot of people worrying about what can they buy, what can they replace, and then also worrying about the amount of money that they're spending on a home, whether it makes sense, in the next 10 to 15 years.
Right. What's also interesting is I'm glad you mentioned about the sell contingent because I have a property that I'm flipping. Jeremy and I, we were there. We had our meeting there last week, and we had an offer, and it was a contingent to the buyer selling their other, their home. Now, initially, I wasn't excited about it, right? But at the same time, I knew it's like, well, hey, it's better than no offer, right? Because things with the high interest rates and things like that, so it was better than no offer. And like you said, the agent I work with talked about, hey, we can do this. We could do a bump clause, and put in our contract that we remain it active and won't take it off the market until until they remove their contingency.
Right.
And so they were able to put it on the market. They put them on the market, and the first day they already had an offer on it.
Perfect.
So yeah, I mean, it's just like being able to being open to things like that. Cause I wasn't excited about it, honestly, even as an investor, like, oh man, but at the same time, my agent talked to me, like, hey, Quito, it's better than getting no offers. At least this way, here's are some ways that we can still do it and not lose the opportunity to bring, buyers to the table. So
yeah, you're actually still marketing and you're still able to do that, but you have a contract where now that person that's your buyer that has a home to sell is very motivated.
Mhm.
to get their house sold, right? Or they
Right.
may not have been as motivated unless they were under contract. Because you got to think about that. That homeowner that's going to be a buyer, they're really worried about finding another home. They don't want to live in a trailer. They don't want to live in their camper while they're
Mhm.
trying to find another property. So understanding that, and a lot of those people, because they're so highly motivated, they're not as picky on inspections. You know,
Mhm.
I've had people waive appraisals because they just want the property. So you do that for them, and it typically makes the whole buying process for your side way smoother.
Mhm. Yeah. So, what are you seeing that? Because obviously, you're working with agents, and with with the new changes with the commission, how are agents going to get paid? I mean, as buyers, I mean, they're kind of limited with how much money they have. Are they able to wrap that into their loan? Are there new loan programs out there that's going to allow, buyers to pay agents their fees? How is that
Good
going to play
question.
out?
Well, FHA and USDA and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac it's not going to be an issue on that. VA is the one that we had to worry about because of the fact that you weren't able, to actually show any kind of credit to the buyer to pay commissions. So there's verbiage that has to be used that has to be approved, one, by your broker, but it also has to be approved really by their legal, right? Everybody's got attorneys that work for their companies. So with VA, and our company owners have been talking to VA about it. So within a contract, before we didn't really talk about commissions in our contracts. It wasn't part of the buy, sell, or the purchase contract. Well, now it's going to have to be. It's going to actually be in the additional provisions where the agent is asking for it within seller concessions. But the way it would have to be worded, instead of it saying seller to credit, let's say 2% of uh, sale price to buyer, so that commission is paid at the title company to the agent, they actually have to say to the brokerage. So it would say seller to pay, 2% of the sale price to eXp Realty. Okay, so that's how it's going to be handled differently for VA. But when it comes to agents getting paid, that they changed the form. It was called a buyer broker, and now it's called a buyer representation form, and it's actually a compensation form. So when the buyer has the conversation with their agent, the agent's going to have to let them read it and see, it is showing that, I'm going to represent you, but now we have to talk about how I'm going to get paid, because there's a good chance that I can't get paid from the actual seller and listing side. So what we're seeing already is that listings are showing on the MLS as 0% compensation to the selling agent. And that's there to see now. In July, they're going to be removing that compensation. So agents won't be able to see up front if that seller is willing to pay them to bring a buyer to co-op that buyer cooperative agreement. So that's going to be going back to the actual buyer agent representation form. Was that agent able to get any compensation from their buyer? And if so, what really has changed on that end too is the buyer's agent can only get compensated that amount that was agreed on the buyer representation or less. You can't get paid more than that amount. If the seller was willing to pay more, you can't. That's negotiated already on the buyer representation form. So those things are going to be totally, different and tricky for agents when they're trying to justify their services. So what we're telling our agents is, when you go into a listing appointment, you're selling your services. You're selling yourself. What am I going to do for you? What is the marketing I'm going to do for you? How am I going to get your home sold in the shortest amount of time for the most amount of money? Well, now agents are going to sit down with their buyers and say, this is what I'm going to do for you. You have to show your value to each and every buyer that you work with as to why they would be willing to work with you versus anybody else and be willing to pay you. Now, you're correct, Quito. Most of those buyers, I would say a majority of buyers, do not have money for all their closing costs. They have a hard time even for their down payment. So
Mhm.
how are they going to be okay with having money to pay their agent, right? So that turns into an agent possibly needing to refer off a buyer to the listing agent and getting a referral fee. Because then the listing agent, let's say that they have negotiated based on their marketing skills, 3% with the seller. Now that listing agent would take a referral fee out of that 3% and pay the buyer's agent to work with that buyer. So you're going to see a lot more maybe of dual transactions, where the listing agent is representing the buyer too. Not because of the fact that they really want to, but because the buyer doesn't have the money to pay for their buyer's agent. And the seller's not willing to maybe contribute another 2 or 3%, so maybe that 25% referral is all that can be paid out to the buyer's agent. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why, like you mentioned, it's so important to focus more on the listing side than on the buying side, because, like I said, right now on the buyer side, it's still kind of unknown how they're all going to get compensated,
Right.
and so yeah, it's going to be interesting how that plays out. And like you said, agents that can master the listing, they're the ones that going to thrive in the market, right?
Exactly. But you know what is exciting is, as an agent, if we can train them to think about the sellers and to build their business off of the homeowners, we can, really dive into looking for absentee owners, really getting back to farming. That's something that I think people have really gotten away with, is farming neighborhoods and becoming the area expert, the community neighborhood expert, really serving your community. Because when it comes to serving your community, you really do that through the homeowners, more so than you do on the buyer side. So I think it's going to help agents to be able to really represent their community, really truly look for those people that need the help. And I know that when I talk to agents, and again, coaching and training them, they tend to want to buy Zillow leads and they want to buy realtor.com leads, because they just want the leads to pour in. They don't want to farm. They don't want to build those relationships. They don't want to, work on looking for those people that have second properties here that might want to sell. I don't know if they feel uncomfortable with those conversations, or they just don't want to mail out letters. I don't really know. But what I know is the majority of agents tend to just want to buy the leads, have them come in, and whichever ones are ready to go right now is who they're going to pay attention to, which is never the way you run your business. You should pay attention to every lead. Every lead's important. But if we can shift their mindset into representing homeowners and representing neighborhoods and communities and really serving those communities, they're going to build really great businesses, and they're going to have more business and they know what to do with it. And buyers will come through that funnel, right? It's just flipping the mindset of how that works. But as far as on the investor side, as they're calling absentee owners, as they're talking to homeowners and farming, those conversations can also be about, have you thought about creative financing? Do you know what that means? And educating them. I really am passionate about that. The thought of helping agents, like you said, open their minds and expand on their knowledge of how they can actually help people to learn the creative financing side and not be afraid of it. And it's really exciting when you start diving into it, because it gives you the ability, like you said, to not have to use a bank. And I think that's pretty cool when people really understand how the whole process works, and how there's people out there that have so much money, they want to invest in other things. And so it's called private money lending, and you have agreements in place with them. They, are very open to providing that money. So like Quito, you were talking about one of the deals that you're getting ready to do. Knowing those private money lenders gives you the down payment that you need in order to work with that owner to take over that property. So it's a really important thing to not get so hung up on interest rates with the banks, because there is another way to get financed, which, don't you agree? That's like, to me, that's like the most exciting thing, is that you don't have to get hung up on interest rates.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you'll get better interest rates than what you could get traditionally at a bank, having to jump through all sorts of hoops and things like that, right? I mean, as a entrepreneur or as a business owner, doing the taxes and stuff, it's hard to show a lot of income, because we want to write off everything, right? And it makes it harder to get traditional loan. But when you can go the private money lender way, you can get easily financed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and Jeremy, same with you. You took on it was a daycare, wasn't it, that you had
Oh,
actually
it's a
acquired?
play cafe. Yeah. So
Okay.
that was the solution to, we actually went all the traditional routes of like to the bank, to the credit union, to other like, I don't know, community um, funding things that like try to pour money back in the community for certain things. 8 of them said no, and the sellers were really stuck on we want all of it. And finally, it's like, well, it's either do seller financing or the deal falls through. And they're like, okay, we'll do that. And so seller financing was the deal that helped them get rid of that. They got what they got their price. They got now a monthly check coming into them, and they got the price they wanted, and it was a win-win for everyone. So totally, it's a great way to do it. And I think that if they could see that side of it. So like when I call listing agents and it's like, hey, the house has been on market for a long time. What's going on? What's the deal? They're like, oh, so and so can't, no one can pay the price. They need to move, but they don't want to accept lowball offers. And so instead of being like an investor that's coming in with a really lowball cash offer, right? It's like, well, let's work together to see what we can do. So as we wrap up here, I just love to see like what would you say to just agents, like if we're investors talking with listing agents or talking with another agent to like go on our behalf, what would be like the best advice you can give for investors and for agents?
So for investors, when you're talking to an agent and you first you feel like they've got that wall up and they don't want to talk to you and they just want to get you off the phone quickly. And sometimes it's ego, that they think they know everything. So when it comes to talking to agents and having that conversation, just saying to them, the reason I'm calling is because I am an accredited investor, which means that I do a lot of investments in our community and I'm doing it to help people within our community. And I would just want to make sure that I find out as much about your property, because if it's something that I or one of my partners would be interested in, we want it on our radar. We want to be able to make sure that, one, we're out there, that we're interested. So if you can't sell it on the traditional market, that you give us a call and we have a conversation. That's how I would go about it with them, because typically that's going to lead them into asking you more questions, because you just broke down that wall of, I'm not trying to get you to do this right now, but I just want you to be open to the fact that we're here to help. And this is what we're doing. We're trying to build relationships with the real estate agents like yourself, and kind of, when you're talking to them about yourself, I see that you have a few listings and you're working in a community, you're kind of, praising them a little bit, just because there is a lot of ego in real estate, and they'll usually bring that wall down and talk to you more and have that conversation with you. On the other side of it, for agents, when an investor does call you, again, be in the mindset that you're thinking about, how can I help my client to the full maximum benefit? If I don't listen to this investor, one, ethically, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? So ethically, we're supposed to make sure that any opportunity that comes, that we present it to our client. So when you shut it down instantly, you never let your client know that that conversation happened, are you being ethical? That's the biggest thing. It's not illegal, but is it ethical? So we want to make sure that we are always doing what we can to help our client, just like we said we would when we had them sign that contract, that I'm going to help you with selling your home and finding the best opportunity for you. So it is not fair to your client when you have these conversations with investors that they never knew it happened. And I can tell you, Jeremy and Quito are not just the only investors that have had agents that they've talked to and then later go back to the homeowner when the listing expires and find out that that homeowner never heard about them. That is not a good thing, and that's not something that we should do. So I just want to, say that, out there to all agents, that you need to be more open-minded about what is best and what is ethical for you to do in representing your client.
All right, well,
That's
thank
great.
you.
That's really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really like that, when talking to, to agents as an investor, letting them know where you're coming from. So, Laurie, I appreciate your time. I love, your experience, and the my daughter's here. She's trying to get my attention.
I saw a hand.
Yeah,
I
there's a
saw it,
hand.
the
You want to come
arm.
say hi, Bella? You want to say hi? Okay,
Hi,
she's
Bella.
15. And
Aw.
so yeah, so I just love your experience and your approach. And if there's, if someone that's listening, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you, to reach out to you?
If you Google my name, Laurie Davis, then in Montana, and really just Laurie Davis, you can find me and reach out to me. But I love people calling me, texting me. You can reach out to me on any of the social media platforms. But let's have those conversations, whether you're an agent and you're feeling that you need more help with growing your business and you want to be able to maybe explore, especially with what's coming up with the changes, and you want to, make sure that you know what you're doing and you feel good about it. Or if you are an investor and you want to get into a networking group and a community and help us build this, get a hold of me on Google. Laurie Davis, you'll see it all over the place. And I really do look forward to hearing from you and helping you with whatever you need.
Perfect.
We'll
And
make
what
sure we'll
we'll
put those
do,
down in the
yeah, we'll
comments.
we'll
Yeah.
provide a link to your social media site as well.
Thank you. I
So
appreciate it.
thank you so much, Laurie. And look forward to having you back on as well. And because this is something that Jeremy and I have been working on with this podcast. So we're learning, we're growing, and we'd like to have more people like you come on, share their insights, share their expertise. So thank you so much, Laurie.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it today, guys. Thank you so much.
All
Thanks.
right.
We'll see you later.